Stream of the April 2021 Sandoval's Board of Directors meeting is simulcast on the official communications Facebook page, Sandoval Cape Coral, and also on Sandoval Neighbors Synergy. Alternate viewing of this meeting is also available for your convenience 24/7 on our YouTube channel, Sandoval Video Box, and Sandoval's website, www.livesandoval.com. Consider subscribing to support Sandoval Video Box on YouTube by clicking both the subscribe button and bell to be notified of future meetings and presentations by Sandoval Communications. The meeting will begin shortly. Sandoval Communications thanks you for your support and participation by watching this meeting.
Sandoval Community Association Board Meeting, April 29th, 2021, to order at 6:07 p.m. Can we all rise for a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. President Cootie present. Vice President Bernard
present.
Secretary Zanfardino, as requested, she's absent due to some medical issues. Director Conway.
Here.
Director Palmer.
Here.
Director Spooner.
Here.
Director Wells.
Here.
Okay. Proof of service and a quorum. And I'd like to welcome Casey Pinella, our General Manager. We'll start with resident comments on agenda topics. Casey?
Okay. We have a few resident agenda topics that came in. The first one is from Jerry and Kern. Somerville. Good evening, Sandoval Board. First off, I want to thank the entire board for your hard work and dedication. I understand the demands on a board member and appreciate all you do. I want to offer a special thanks to Director Gary and Ron for meeting with me on behalf of Somerville. As the board considers security and reintroducing towing, I believe there is an omission that should be considered. When a vehicle is towed, the first question an owner is likely to ask is, whom do I contact? The signage at the entrances contain this information, but not in a prominent manner. The company and phone number are not recognizable for a reasonable distance. I believe additional signage should be provided at strategic locations such as the clubhouse and dog parks to clearly identify whom to contact should a vehicle be towed. Any common area parking should have a sign. I understand state statutes only require posting at the entrances of private property, but if someone is towed, an email from management months ago or a sign outside the gate are not the most likely place to look for contact information. This is especially true if the violation is a guest, not resident. Please consider additional signage as a courtesy to the community. I've included photo of the existing signage and a sample from one of our previous vendors. And there are photos attached I'd be happy to share with the board at a later time. Thank you. The next one is from Tony. Unit 1206 is all that's stated. What is the progress on recouping revenue? Oh, sorry, I guess this will be discussed at a later time in regards to towing. This one also, gate strikes. What is the progress on recouping revenue on the gate strikes? Is there a report on how much was recouped in the last month? And monthly report should be generated for meetings so the residents can see. Thank you for your attention in this matter. The next one, Lynn Clark, 2643 Brea Court. I believe the best economic course of action is a community-wide contract for internet. That's the leverage the individual homeowner doesn't have. It shouldn't have to raise our fees. Thank you. That'll be addressed during CenturyLink update. And then that's all I have. The others are open forum.
Thank you. I'll ask for the approval of the past meeting minutes, both last month and our executive session.
I do have a change on the meeting minutes. This one was to be March 17th, and that's also changed here. So with that change,
Okay.
And the rest.
Correcting the date from 2/17 to 3/17.
Correct.
And I would just say, these are official records of the board and posted to the website. I'm on green. That we formalize the minutes, the formatting, and I'm happy to help Anita with that process, or Casey, we can help her with that process.
Okay.
Citing, positions, names,
Sure.
capturing the motion, capturing the action, capturing the votes, motion passed, motion failed.
Absolutely.
Anyone entertaining a motion to
Yes.
approve? Gary? Oh,
I will.
okay.
Melanie made a motion. Do we have a second? Lori seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I do want to thank Kathy Conway, stepped up to the plate and has agreed to be our official note taker this evening in Anita's absence. So Kathy, I thank you for taking on that responsibility this evening. Yeah. Board President's report. To say the least, it was an interesting first month on the job as president of our great community. So many issues with so little time to resolve them. I've had to rely heavily on my fellow board members and guidance for their guidance and opinions and institutional knowledge, just to name a few of the ways that they've assisted me along the way. Along with the holdover members from the previous board and our newly elected members, we're very fortunate to have had Ron Spooner agree to take over Al Roper's term as director, and William Tubb, who's sitting out in the audience, to have agreed to serve as treasurer for another year. We're glad to have you both back. Both of these gentlemen bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the board, and I'm honored to serve with them. So on behalf of Sandoval, thank you, Ron and Bill, for your dedication and service to our community. In our first month alone, this board has accomplished a few of our goals for 2021. We opened the office back up Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for all business transactions. And for the first time in well over a year, we actually have residents, once again, sitting here in our open board meetings. It's good to see the turnout here tonight. I thank you and welcome you for attending and for your concern for Sandoval. I also want to thank so many residents who reached out to me with positive comments regarding the monthly update. I can assure you that I will continue to provide an update each month so we can continue to keep the line of communication open between the board and the community. But please keep in mind, this update, well, one of my personal goals, will not be possible without the input and advice of my fellow board members. It's not about me, it's not about the board or our management team. It's all about you, the residents of Sandoval, who deserve to be kept abreast of important issues on a routine basis. All of us working together for the good of Sandoval can continue to keep this community a great place to live. While we have accomplished a few of our goals, we have so many more to accomplish, and each with a higher level of difficulty. We will work very hard to obtain those goals. I will continue to make every effort to lead this board in a positive direction and maintain healthy dialogue with the community. Even though we may not always agree, hopefully we can maintain civility for the good of all of Sandoval. Thank you. Treasurer's report.
Bill Tubb is here.
The January 31st, 2021, February 28th, 2021, and March 31st, 2021 financial highlights. The Finance Committee has not been reconstituted this year. for the year of 2024. Therefore, no meetings have taken place. On April the 9th, 2021, President Cuddy and I met with Casey Piniella, our general manager, Steve Harshman, vice president at FRS, and Mark Landis, head of accounting at FRS, to review the January and February financials. Unfortunately, we found several errors in both the labeling of accounts and the balances brought in from our 2020 audit. We noted these differences and requested a second meeting after the corrections were made. To date, this meeting has not been set up by FRS. The March financial statements have been delayed due to the mail for the statements from our old Pope Bank accounts at BB&T Bank. I recommend that these accounts, other than the CIT account, which holds several investments for the reserve and bulk telecom funds, be closed immediately, and all funds reside in our new Bank United accounts. From what we could see, items such as electricity for gates, pool, street lights, clubhouse, and tennis courts were missing from the February financials, and items such as management services for FRS were accrued at $5,700 per month, even though our contract calls for the charges to be waived for the first 3 months of 2021. Quite a bit of work needs to be done before our first quarter 2021 financials can be presented to the community. Our auditor, Tony Gregory, CPA, has completed our 2020 audit and identified December expenses not reported by Pope in the amount of $109,000. He's taken those into the account in our audit report, which he will be presenting later on tonight. Part of the work done in the April 9th meeting with FRS was to verify the beginning balances for January 1, 2021 match the ending balances in our 2020 audit ending balances. This work continues. And Casey, I would ask that you and the accounts payable staff at FRS talk with Tony, because part of the missing beginning balances were $345,000 of construction in progress for our clubhouse. FRS did not bring that in at all. That needs to come in. We also need to have a system set up for receiving pay estimates from Stevens Construction, of which we've received 3 totaling about $845,000 in the first 3 months of the year, so that they're posted to accounts payable correctly, flows through into the financial statements to be booked and recorded as Tony did for the first $345,000, and that the money to fund those checks be transferred over from bulk telecom. I don't see any of that happening so far, so that's a major problem we need to work out. Number 3, I cannot give you exact balances in the reserve fund and telecommunications surplus fund for January, February, or March 2021, as the bank accounts were labeled improperly in the January and February financials. This is being corrected. Number 4, FRS did receive homeowner balances from Pope Properties and has completed loading them into the FRS system. First and now second quarter assessment payments have been posted. Everyone has the ability to log on to their account on the web to verify the information is correct, and I encourage everyone to do so. That's it. Any questions?
I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. Can you guarantee, absent something like an act of God, starting May 15th, that we will have monthly financials?
That is what FRS promised us during the negotiation period at contract signing. So since I don't have any direct influence on production of those, I can't guarantee that, but I would expect that.
Has it been communicated that that's our expectation?
Yes.
And the reason why we mentioned the 15th, because that is at least a week before every board meeting, so every resident can look at our financials and ask us questions. If there's some anomalies on there, raise it. Comment, question. That's why we have this open forum.
Well, and to follow up on that, that's part of the reason we need to have that second meeting with FRS. I want to know who's reviewing those financials before they post them. The fact that no electric bills were posted in February, that's not acceptable.
It isn't. How long has these mislabeled entries delayed us in getting the financials?
Mislabeled, we only became aware of that February the 9th at the meeting, so no longer than that.
April the 9th. April the 9th.
April the 9th, I'm sorry, yes.
Big difference.
Yeah.
And how long did the transition for Pope to close our year-end financials impact us getting the financials?
Tony had a hard time with our audit because of that. They just stopped working December 31st and said, to heck with it. So he had to recreate a lot of stuff. That $109,000 worth of missing invoices, he had to go through invoices that were received after the fact to identify what belonged in 2020 and what was legitimate in 2021. So that was at least a couple of weeks worth of work for Tony.
It sounds like that this isn't a tremendous amount of work and that we should clearly set our expectations for a May 15th deadline for the April financials. Is that reasonable?
I think that is reasonable, because once this board votes on the new members for the Finance Committee and we start meeting, the Finance Committee needs to meet like the Tuesday before the board's Thursday meeting, so the 15th of the month is almost a minimum. We should have them sooner than that if possible.
Is it fair to communicate to them that if we do not have our financials by May 15th, we expect them to be here and explain to us why we don't?
Absolutely.
Will that be done?
I think it just
Absolutely.
was.
Okay. And how long till we have our March financials?
I have not heard what the date might be, but I would expect they'll set up the meeting so we can have the meeting with them again to go over the labeling and what's in there. And I would think those would be the March financials. So within the next week, 10 days, max.
Thank you.
In January in the financials, the landscaping that is done by Down to Earth appeared to be paid double. With that, I'll say, in February, there are goose eggs. Is December, January, and no payment in February, or do we double pay in January?
Part of the expenses missing in December that did not post was Down to Earth. So that was December and January's that you saw.
And the zeros in February means we didn't pay February.
I can't answer that. It could be that we haven't done that yet, but I thought February was in there.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in March, so I don't know if it doubled up again.
Well, nobody's seen the March because it hadn't been issued.
That's why I didn't see it.
We're
I
also
thought it was
waiting
in
as well.
February's, but I'll look and check. Anything else? Am I excused to leave?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Excuse.
Thank you, Bill.
General Manager's report.
Like mine's really loud. Good evening, everyone. General Manager's report. We've been working through the clubhouse expansion project. We thank everyone for their patience while the electricity has gone on and off and the internet has gone on and off. We also had the front doors and some pool gates that went off of the timer from Envera. And after 4 different work orders, they discovered it was a Comcast issue where there was an old modem, so that was replaced today. We're hoping that all the access points work now. We've placed several work orders for Bose Electric. Somewhat went out of business a bit, not totally, but they referred our business to a new gate company. So they came out, did all of the repairs that we were waiting to be done with lights at each arm bar. We did have that Pine Island one. We tried to put a strip on it to use the old bar. That's not going to work. So all of those items were approved on Tuesday to be completed, including the Veterans Gate, the station there that wobbles when the arm comes and goes. So we also had the iron work done on the gates. That was all completed. The city was contacted in regards to the sales center, and we were able to successfully get a citation noted to the owners of that property to get that cleaned up. So that should be cleaned up. They confirmed that they gave them a citation. It should be cleaned up shortly. We were able to do the sewer viewer waste with Honk pitched in, so we got a little bit of a break on the price there, so we could dispose of our waste on their property. The pool filters were replaced, the pool step ladder was repaired, basketball hoop was resecured. Several of the times the porta potty trailer overflowed, we were able to keep up with that. Let's see. One of the first requests in my new position at Sandoval from a homeowner was to work with Department of Transportation and getting a directional sign specifically for Sandoval off of Pine Island Road. So after much help from Marilyn, Stow, Kathy, and we were able to report as of, I got a photo I received today, that that sign was installed off of Pine Island Road, which is a big deal to a lot of residents. So a lot of work was put into that for a long time, and I mean, it's 8 months later, but that's a victory there. We do have pool proposals for the slide that we've presented to the board to review this evening. We have lake proposals for a couple of the lakes, Lake 10 and Lake 13, for the board to review and decide whether they would want to do testing on those lakes, which was recommended by the lake company. We were able to have the landscape committee forward to the board the estimated expenditures for 2021 for review in order to get all the items that are recommended on their list, hopefully approved or at least discussed, and any changes needed. CenturyLink RFPs were sent out to 6 vendors, which will be updated later today. And management recommends a decision to be made on the dog parks regarding landscape. We've had several residents for a few months requesting. We'll have that later in the meeting as well. And social activities, I think everyone can agree the new social director's knocking it out of the park and doing an amazing job. So we thank Lorraine for that. And we thank the rest of the staff for them hanging in there with all the transitions and everything going on. And as an on-site team, we are committed to increasing our level of customer service. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Casey.
Yes.
We're moving on to the audit. We're moving to the audit next.
Yes.
The question that was raised about the down-to-earth invoices for February, January's are in January's financials, February's are in February's. The December that was not posted was posted by Tony as a prior period, so you would not see that in the current year income statement. So that's where he misunderstood what it was, because he only saw 2 months worth.
Okay, good deal. Vic, are you ready for Tony? Tony, can you hear me? This is Casey Pinella.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. We're ready to go.
Take it away.
I'm getting some feedback. Is it my turn? Are you ready for me?
Yes, we're ready for you.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. And yes, I was going to have a little overview, but I wanted to step back for a minute and thank Gary. I know he said in his opening remarks he just had his first month, and so a board member, a former president, I appreciate what he was going through, and I had the opportunity to speak with him about a month ago when we were wrapping the audit up. He was just getting thrown into the fire, and I was also pleased to hear that Bill Tubb, who was there, is offering to stay on as treasurer for another year because he's been instrumental with working with us over several years, and it's encouraging to hear that with the different changes in management and such that he alluded to, that him staying in that position is good for not only the association but us as your partner in that. So kudos to Bill and Gary, and with that I'll go ahead and start my introduction. My name is Tony Gregory. We have been your CPA firm for about going on 4 years now. 2017, right after your turnover, is when we were engaged to become your CPA. And during that time, for the most part, as I mentioned, Bill has been instrumental in helping us. And as he mentioned, I was going to refer to it later in my comments since he brought it up. One of the challenges this year in the audit, as he made known, was the change in management companies that occurred. While it did occur after the financial statement date of December, unfortunately it occurred during the midst of our audit work, and the continuity of that process impacted greatly. So we did have some extra heavy lifting this year, but we did get through that. And as he mentioned, and we can talk about further, but there were a lot of adjustments for payables that typically would have been recorded as part of the normal closing process that were basically omitted, overlooked because of the change in management companies and the desire to just close the books and move on, and folks did not get everything closed that would normally be done. So with some assistance, Casey was instrumental in identifying some items that they had advised us of, but in addition to that, we expanded our test work, both in decreasing our materiality levels as well as extending that search for unrecorded liabilities well into February through the end of February. And as Bill mentioned, we did propose an adjustment which was recorded to the December financials for 2020 to the tune of about $109,000. And that was primarily, substantially, as Bill again mentioned, a lot of that was your landscaping bills and some of your accruals for different items and electricity and things of that nature. So after the adjustments were proposed, we were able to issue what's called an unmodified opinion, which is basically our professional license on the line signing our report saying that the financial statements, after adjusted, are not materially misstated. And we issued that report back in March. Financials, as audited, were provided to the board. Do you have board members currently have a copy of them? I was just going to point out a couple of items and talk at a high level, and I can answer any specific questions that may exist. But are you in possession of a copy of the audit?
Yes, they are. Most.
Okay. We're not going to go through it in detail because, number one, it's not conducive with being on the phone, and I know you've got remote people as well, but we'll just talk at a very high level. As I mentioned, we did issue an unqualified opinion, which is an indication that the financial statements after adjustment are fairly accurate. At the end of the year, the association had about $5.2 million in total assets, a combination of cash, receivables, and different assets amongst the different funds. You have your operating fund, your reserves, as well as what you call your telecom fund. And amongst all of those, total assets were about $5.2 million in total. Total liabilities at the end of the year with your fund balances were $2.8 million in liabilities and about $2.3 million in equity. So from a financial statement standpoint, the balance sheet is very strong. Your assets greatly exceed your liabilities, but that's mostly attributable to the telecom activity where you're setting money aside for your future, your current, I should say, used to be future, it's current construction and expansion of your clubhouse. From an income statement standpoint, page 4 is what's called the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes of fund balances. That's another term for an income statement or profit and loss. From an operating standpoint, the operating fund lost about $70,000 for the year, which means that either expenses were slightly over budget or revenues may not have been quite enough to cover all expenses for the year. You ran about $3.8 million in both revenues and expenses. Again, slightly higher than revenues for this particular year. Overall, your operating fund has a slight deficit balance, which means cumulatively since inception, the operating fund has run a little bit of a loss. That's something that Finance Committee, if they do get back together, if not, Bill, in conjunction with the other board members, you may want to look at your budgeting process and just ensure from an operating standpoint what the causes are of the operating fund running just a little bit under budget, over budget, I should say, and address whether modifications to the operating budget or increase in assessments or a combination of both might be necessary for that. That's an exercise that you want to keep in mind as you go through your next budgeting cycle. As I mentioned, our biggest challenge this year that we did work through was the change in management companies. We hope that that's not a recurring event. And in any case, just a little self-serving. If you do it again, we would request that you try not to do it during the middle of the audit, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And if there's any changes in the future, certainly just we'd like to be insured up to a certain amount, typically, generally $250,000 per bank, per client. And in our, the association, you've got funds in excess of those balances, so what we recommend is that you work with your cash management folks at your management company and the bank to either go into some products that will divest that money and keep it within FDIC limits, or potentially, move it amongst different banks if necessary. But that's not usually necessary these days, because the banks have products that allow you to do that and maintain the relationship at one bank without having to go and open up accounts all over town. One other observation we made, and this typically isn't done by auditors, but I do it for two reasons. One, I see that it becomes a topic of conversation in most times that we ask about it, and second of all, being a board member, myself and a former president, I never want to be caught off guard with something that I wasn't aware of. So we always look at what your crime insurance coverage limit is. And the reason we look at that specifically is that particular type of coverage is addressed by Florida statute, and it says more or less that your crime coverage should be an amount sufficient to cover all funds that the association maintains at all points in time. So with your cash balances at the end of last year being somewhere in the area of about 4.7 million, that's correct, yeah, 4.7 million between your cash and your CDs, your crime coverage is only currently, based on the information we saw, 3.5 million. So we make a recommendation that you get with your agent and have the appropriate increase to your crime coverage to comply with Florida statute and to keep your funds properly insured. A couple of minor recommendations we made were that you collect ARC deposits on behalf of your ARC applications from your residents. And we have noted some of the dates on those. Some of those are rather old, probably beyond the point where either they've already been refunded or forfeited, or a combination of those. But we just recommend that somebody do a little bit of an accounting of those and go do a little research and potentially either refund or write off any old deposits that are no longer truly held for those ARC applications. And then the final recommendation, we saw some stale, outdated checks that were on the bank reconciliation that carried over from Pope, and I'm sure that First Service Accounting, once they take things over and look at it, will follow up on these. But there were some old outstanding checks dated, I think a couple were well over a year. Typically things don't stay outstanding that long, so either the check got lost or it got voided or what have you. So we just recommend that your accounting department investigate those and don't let them sit out there outstanding indefinitely. And of course, we didn't put it in writing because everybody was well aware of the fact that the cutoff in the accruals and the payables that resulted from this audit was as condition of the change in management companies. It wasn't a condition that we've experienced in prior audits, so we didn't feel that writing a management letter recommendation on that was necessary based on it was an isolated incident due to the change. But that was our largest challenge this year. That sounds like it was, and it continues to be for you all internally. So I would just recommend you be patient with First Service and let them hopefully get you current and up to speed, and then going forward, hopefully everybody's well informed and the financial statements are timely and accurate. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments that the board may have.
Questions? Comments? Tony, we don't have any questions or comments at this point.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity. Gary, continue to get good luck, Bill. I can look forward to continue to work with you.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All right,
Tony.
everyone. Have a great night. Thank you.
So if we want to, we'll need to make a motion to approve the audit as is, and then contract Tony Gregory to perform the audit for 2021.
We'll accept a motion to accept the audit as is, and then contracting Tony Gregory to perform audit 2021. Melanie makes a motion. A second?
I would like to say that I received the board pack 2 hours before this meeting, and I have not had time to review a 68-page board pack, including the audit, to a point that I would be comfortable in voting for anything.
The audit was distributed prior to today. The power was out all day, so the packet couldn't come over earlier than that. But you did receive the audit prior to today.
Did you receive the audit?
Do we have a second? Second, Kathy? Any other discussion?
When did you send the audit?
I'd have to go back in my email. I didn't realize I'd have to have that date available, so I can surely check it and let you know.
All in favor? All opposed?
Okay.
I'm just abstaining.
Table.
I would like to read it.
She's abstaining.
Tabled.
3-2. Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay. Move on to the ad hoc committee reports. Clubhouse improvement.
The expansion project has seen major project in the last 30 days. Okay, the expansion project has seen major progress in the last 30 days. The renovations are almost complete. The bathrooms are ready for occupancy. And once we receive a certificate of occupancy, we will bid the bathroom trailer adieu. And hopefully we can do that in the next few days, because that's a $5,000 a month cost. So the sooner we can get back into our own bathrooms, the better. The fitness room has the flooring in place. The movement room will see its new floor next week. And once we receive the certificate of occupancy, the office staff will move into the fitness room so that the new flooring and the painting can be done in the existing office space. Sheetrock is currently going up in the new building. The stucco is being applied to the exterior surfaces. Roof tiles will arrive and be put in place next week as well. In order to provide a site with minimal disruption from rainwater, we contracted to have all the downspouts be directed into piping that was connected to the storm drains underground. This will dramatically reduce the amount of surface water that will be present during the rainy season. This week's construction held no new surprises and was completed quickly. As I mentioned last month, we need to be thinking about the furnishings for each building, and from the list I outlined at the last meeting. Everything is in short supply, and the arrival date can be projected to be quite distant in the future. We are all looking forward to the final steps of this project and still predicting an opening in May for the renovations and August for the new building. In the project funding directive that was presented in November of 2020, we directed that a portion of the renovations and painting of the existing building and the audiovisual upgrades to replace outdated equipment be paid with reserve funds. Since that time, we have found mold in the building and significant HVAC deficiencies. These have all been corrected. I will now turn this presentation over to Ron and Melanie to address the needed BARD requests from the reserves for the renovations of the existing building.
I would like to move for a bar for the following items. The first one would be for the mold mitigation for our current clubhouse for a total of $19,289.03. The reasoning behind this is that when we tore off the drywall, we took out the cabinets, we saw significant mold that frankly we were not able to identify before. We had to remediate that, and that would be a cost that would have been part of the old clubhouse regardless of the expansion. The next thing would be a bar request for the HVAC repairs to the existing clubhouse. We went through this and tried to take our time to really itemize the repairs that were required for the new clubhouse, for instance, or remodeling of the existing clubhouse, to be clear. For instance, some examples of that, we had to move some thermostats around. That is a cost that is incurred for the expansion. However, when we reviewed our equipment, some of the sensors were not working. A lot of the equipment was not working. We had drainage spouts that went to nowhere, frankly, and a lot of the equipment was in disrepair. So I would move that we would need a bar request in the amount of $18,019.35 for repairs to the HVAC to the existing clubhouse. The next one would be we are replacing the water heater in the existing clubhouse. We worked hard to get this cost down. It was originally close to $4,000. In fact, I went to Lowe's and picked it up, saved money. So we got it down to likely less than $1,500. So the bar request would be at a maximum of $1,500. The next bar request is a big one, but this was provided back last year when we provided our budget, and it was for the renovation to the existing clubhouse, and that is for $209,000. And finally, we have as a reserve item the ability to upgrade and repair our existing audiovisual to our current clubhouse, and that would be for $34,000. And again, most of these were already provided as part of our budget outlook, so they're not unanticipated. I would say the mold mitigation, obviously, we were not able to anticipate, but that is a true reserve item, and the HVAC is a true reserve item also. So I would request authorization to get bars for each of these.
I would point out that the HVAC upgrades and repairs, we took that item and we went through them, and some of them were designated as contingency expenditures in the contingency for Stevens
Correct.
Construction, and then some we felt were due to the condition of the equipment that was substandard, and that was what we're talking about from the reserve.
We literally put a mark next to it. This is a reserve item. This is an expansion item. And again, it was, if we are replacing or moving this equipment due to the expansion, enlarging rooms, well, this is an expansion item because we normally would not have to do that. But if it was true mechanical issue that would have to be addressed anyway, it's a fair request to make it a bar item.
I'd also mention that on the mold mitigation, it was determined that one of our major causes were leaking windows. And once that was identified, all those windows were recaulked and resealed, so we will not have that, I don't think, have that problem in the future. And it's interesting, in the new building, it's quite an elaborate process that they're doing around those windows to make sure they're sealed. There's 3 or 4 different coats of different things and tapes that was not state-of-the-art at the time the first building was made.
I think that's a good point, because initially we had a lot of resident comments saying, well, I built my home for this dollar amount per square foot. This is a true commercial building. For instance, when you see the I-beam, I mean, it is impressive. The amount of quality into this building, and we plan, at least I do, and I'm sure Don would assist, an itemized list that differentiates this from a residential building.
Hardware.
Absolutely. And also, we have found a lot of issues currently with the existing clubhouse, which we are rectifying. So there is some advantage for the current clubhouse that we're able to address that we frankly wouldn't have seen. But it is a quality job, and I think the main point is, knock on wood, we are on schedule and on budget so far. And we've worked very hard to make sure that stays in place, and we're very optimistic.
Regarding the multi-purpose room, I think we all experienced times where there were hot spots, and we're trying to adjust the air conditioning. It was found that there was one duct system that had a vent on the outside of the building that just came in and dropped hot air right in the middle of the building that wasn't cooled at all. So that and separating some of the air conditioning units, I think we're going to find that we've got a climate-controlled fitness center when it opens.
And we continue to meet multiple times on a weekly basis. For instance, this week we met for an hour with the cabinet guy to review the reception area, to make sure that we have upgraded cabinets and counters. And so when you have the initial appearance, it looks really, really good. And then our weekly construction meeting. So I'd like to move for the board to approve these bar requests. Hopefully I don't have to restate them.
So,
Motion?
Yeah.
Let's make a motion for approval. Kathy seconds. All in favor?
Thank you.
Kathy, I can provide a list of those bars for you.
I can email them to you.
Yeah, I captured
Ron
it.
has too.
Did we want Lori's?
We're gonna actually need the bars.
I'll email it to you right now.
I did the one for the heater, but I think I capped it at like 12, so we can revise that, the actual forms. Okay, so we have 5-0 motion passes.
Ready to move on? Taylor Morrison litigation. Ron?
Sure. You should have them now. Taylor Morrison litigation. I'm pleased to announce that John Elkins has agreed to join the TM litigation committee. He will be replacing Dave Hiller. We appreciate his contribution. We will likely be adding also an additional resident volunteer too. I didn't mention it to Gary, but I would also like to add Gary to the committee. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to add John Elkins and our board president, Gary Cootie, to the Taylor Morrison litigation committee. Sorry.
Any questions or comments? None, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
And I'd like to add that Don and I are also on the committee, and I have to touch base with Al to see if his interest is, if he's still interested in being a committee member. As for an update, as you may recall, we filed our lawsuit in December 2020. Just this past month, we've recently served discovery requests. We have served our requests for production and also requests for admissions. We will be attending a mediation in a couple months, and there will likely be 3 board members. We haven't designated who yet, but there will be 3 board members present at the mediation. 2 weeks ago, we met with both our attorneys, Paul Sangiovanni and Jonathan Huffman from Morgan & Morgan. They continue to work to represent the interests of our community. These are nationally recognized attorneys with impressive results, and they have been representing us on a contingency basis since June 2019. That is the update. Thank you.
Risk management?
I think, am
That's
I
me.
the board liaison?
You weren't yet on the board, so I volunteered, but you're
Okay.
welcome
You're-
to join us.
I got a couple things I can just add if you don't mind,
Okay.
and then you can finish it up. When I initially met with First Service, one of my expectations was that they would be providing us a schedule to come out and not only look at the community as a whole, but the common areas in terms of maintenance and risk assessment. I recently met with Gary and Melanie, and I reiterated that I'm still awaiting that schedule. We expect a periodic interval in which they come and let us know what risks are outstanding. And at that point, it's up to us to take care of them. I plan to continue to work with the risk assessment group. They are a very talented bunch, and they've already walked this entire community to make sure that we limit our risks. I will be sharing the schedule with them and look forward to continuing to work with them. And that's about where I'm at, so you feel free to.
So on Monday, March 29th, as the board liaison for 2021, I met with the established committee. At that time, the discussion was that we wanted to do a periodic inspection of the common areas. One was done previously, and now a second one was done of both the common areas and street neighborhoods with a goal of completing it by April 7th. We met again on Friday, April 9th, and the risk management chair basically identified some of the findings in the April 21 periodic inspection and outlined a plan going forward and shared the report, the findings, with the general manager. So tonight, on behalf of the committee, we're requesting a progress report of action taken within 30 days, which would be the next board meeting, May 27th. So we can see, what's done, what further assistance is needed. And then lastly, a charter was drafted. Ron, I'll get it to you. You weren't on the distribution. But a charter was drafted and shared with the general manager to post on the website with the other committee charters.
Sure. And I don't know if the board needs to revote whether I'm involved or not. I'm happy to volunteer my time. part of our initial organization of this group was in response to our extremely high liability policy. Frankly, it went from 30,000 to upwards to 175,000. And we were informed of that in February, and that's part of the reason we were off our budget last year. It was a significant increase. And so we are looking at our risk very, very closely right now. And I'm familiar with a lot of the history here, so I'm happy to continue to volunteer my time. And also, the method in which we do go around and do this risk assessment is important, because the manner in which we do it, we have to make sure we insulate ourselves a bit. So it's up to the board whether I'll just continue or you want to vote.
I don't believe that's necessary.
I think it needs to be a valuable addition. I also would like to ask, how are you going to incorporate the insurance? There's an insurance group that was kind of separate in addition to. Is that part of this committee? How would you recommend that be put?
I don't think we did a very good job in identifying this as a separate committee in the past. To me, part of having the insurance group, another very impressive group, people that are just volunteering their time and a tremendous amount of time just to help their neighbors. I think this is part of risk assessment because they have some valuable insight. They have been working in the insurance industry for a long time. They know the proactive steps that we can take to make this community more enticing to a reasonable liability policy. So I would like to have them part of the risk assessment group, but as a subcommittee, and so that they can have some communication with each other. And that'd be what I would propose.
That's what I was anticipating you saying, and I support that.
I don't believe we would need to. It's just more of a structure. The committee is already existing. Unless
you might want to mention the names of those who've done that, and I think they probably would continue to serve.
Okay.
It was Craig Snyder and Dave Niemer.
Dave
Niemer.
I pronounce it.
Is it N-E-R?
I thought it was Niemer.
They are. Okay, good.
We've had enough calls with them, so.
Yeah, right.
Complete your report. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the Cable Internet Committee.
Steve, as the chair, do you want to speak?
Steve Cases will be making this report.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thanks. The committee has reached the end of phase one, which is to prepare the RFP. We passed it by Ron. We appreciate your help and insight, and I'm pleased to announce that it went out today to the vendors. The schedule for the RFP is the last date for email submission of questions is May 11th. We'll respond to those questions by May 18th. The final date for submission of the proposals from the vendors will be May 25th. Intent to award and contract negotiations start estimated at June 15th. And then the notice of final award would be July 23rd. So what really has to happen during that whole process is that once we get questions and we resolve whether or not we need addendums, and my favorite response to an RFP is we look forward to your proposal. That's my answer to your question, no matter what it is. But hopefully there's no technical glitches. It's a 29-page document. We're taking the position that we're telling the industry what we expect, not the industry telling us what they're going to give us. And I think that's a significant difference from the situation when we originally took on this CenturyLink issue. Once we get all the bids in, the committee will do a composite matrix, make a recommendation from their perspective to the board. The board can then review that, answer questions, and so on, and we will then vote. They will then vote on whether or not they would like to recommend sending a letter of intent to a specific vendor. At that point, the Ron Spooners of the world will take over, and the model contract between that entity and us will go under review, and I'm hoping that won't take too long. And just say that we would like to see if that could be done by July 23rd, or about the time of the meeting in July. I know that sounds like a long period of time, but this is a very valuable contract. It's of great benefit to all of the homeowners if we can get the right contract in place. It provides enough data and breakdown to answer the question posed earlier. If we want internet only, if we want internet and bulk TV, we can make those decisions because I've structured the RFP so that there's enough data that we can then shred that document and the pricing sheets and essentially have a good idea what our position will be once we negotiate the contract. Second note would be, as we all know, May 31st is the turn down date for our television service from our friends at CenturyLink. Just a couple of notes. I hope everybody's, if they're not heading back north for their other cable TV company, or making arrangements to get some type of service here. Again, the committee stands ready to help anybody who may need help in either setting that up or making recommendations for them. So please work through Casey and her group to forward any questions that may not be able to be resolved by individual residents or a neighbor or someone else, your grandkids, in terms of getting your system up and running. One note is that you can certainly turn those set-top boxes in if you're heading up north, or if you just want to get them out of your site. But at this point, CenturyLink has told me that there's really no requirement that we turn those back in at this point. And we wrote the RFP around the fact that whoever the successful vendor is, say that quickly, they have to remove the old equipment, be that the television set-top boxes or the internet routers or both. So not to worry. If you want to turn it in, that's fine. There's boxes in the office. If not, don't worry about it. The other thing is we made a slight change in the existing infrastructure at the office late this afternoon, and we're hoping that the internet will be sustained and the phone service for a longer period of time. It won't be affected by the construction. So I put a UPS on those critical systems, and I'm hoping that they'll sustain themselves as we move forward. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Ron, the internet contract committee.
Have we formally announced a committee? This is my first. Has there been a formal committee announced?
No, it hasn't been announced yet.
Well, I think that's certainly something that we need to discuss. And just to be clear, what we're talking about is the legal end, our position in terms of CenturyLink abruptly ending our service despite the fact that they've had a contract. We obviously feel there should be some legal ramifications to that. We have engaged our counsel, who fortunately represents many communities that CenturyLink has taken this position with, and has already successfully negotiated certain agreements with them. So we have engaged that counsel. We have set some pretty high expectations with them, and we're communicating on a weekly level. To date, who's been communicating has been Gary, Melanie, and me. And we have tried to keep the cable committee up to date in terms of where we are. But we're very conscious of that May 31st date, and that there could be certain ramifications, frankly, to the community. I'm concerned that currently we have 40 megabytes, which I think that's pretty low, frankly. And if this community is going to start streaming, it'll be taxed significantly. So that is on our minds, and we are aggressively engaging council and their council currently. Anything else to add? And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Everyone has my email. It's listed on our website, and I'd be happy to sit down and talk with anybody. I'm sure Gary and Melanie would be also, because we're doing this more as a group, frankly.
Move on to the Envira Gate Strike Evaluation Committee. This is an ad hoc committee that was created this year. This committee's already kind of hit the ground running. The chair of the committee is Rick Devine, and the committee members consist of Todd Reinhardt, David Ott, and Aaron Morrison. Rick has already hit the ground running and is out inspecting gates and taking charge on this situation. The goal of the committee is we realized that the gates are one of the major issues that affect our community, and one of the major complaints that I receive, on a daily basis are on the gates. So we're looking at, we actually met, Melanie and I met with the operations manager, the account manager, and their business development manager on Tuesday of this week for a couple hours, and we got the dog and pony show, I think, of what's supposed to be happening as opposed to what we truly believe is happening. And yes, there's culpability on both parts. There's culpability where we just have some impatient residents or guests that are busting through the gates, and there's culpability sometimes that the gates just aren't working properly. Briefly, some of the things we learned today that you may or may not know is that Envira has nothing to do with the metal gates. They're completely, when those go down, that's a whole separate item altogether. That's been Bose and now the new company we have, they're working on that. So the metal gates can go down, something can go wrong with Envira, or the internet can go down. So there's three opposing forces that can all work against each other that cause a lot of the malfunctions within the gates. We've let them know that we're extremely unhappy with the system right now, regardless of whose fault it is. And our plan is to completely evaluate, are we getting what we were intended to get through the Envira contract? Is that being provided to us? We need to evaluate what is in that service agreement, and because I don't think any of us were for sure what we're getting out of the service agreement. And we are working on educating. Some of the things they brought to our attention was they've never educated our office staff on where to put the stickers. And quick example, my wife got a new car. We put a sticker on her car, and half the car has to be under the front gate before it reads the sticker, and it shouldn't have to be that way. That's going to cause a gate strike someday. But it's in a bad position. The operations manager looked at it and said it shouldn't be there. It should be in a different place. And how do we know? And so they're going to provide training to Casey and the staff. They're also going to provide us with some resident training. I think they promised, Melanie, that they would put either a webinar or something on to provide resident training on the proper way and what to do. We've tried to open up the line of communications, and one of the things we want to add on the notification is security to that list when they call the three of you in the office, because if it happens on a Friday night and they call the office, nobody knows about it till Monday. So we want to add security to that. Their contract is up roughly this time next year, so we've got a year to determine if this is fixable, and hopefully it is, so that we don't have to make another huge investment next year, because that's exactly what it would be if we had to wholesale this whole system out. But that's what this committee's tasked with. We have some strong people, I feel, on the committee, and then we'll keep the community posted as we move forward. Any questions? Okay, on the traffic Control Committee, we have not, ad hoc committee has not met yet, but that committee is going to consist of Linda Mooney, Ed Coronado, and Eric Blythe have agreed to serve on that committee, and we will probably meet sometime next week to choose a chair. And the Traffic Enforcement Committee is, it's not designed, as I had a conversation with Eric today, it's not the design of how we can fine residents for speeding within the community. It's designed of how do we basically slow everybody down. What measure? There's a lot of measures out there. Some are real popular, some are very unpopular. Stop signs, speed bumps, radar guns. Trying to work with the law enforcement community to help us. But we're going to have to. The committee's going to take a look at everything that's available to us and ascertain what we can do to control traffic. Because I think all of us are concerned that sooner or later we're going to have somebody injured, a pedestrian or a bicyclist injured by the rate of speed that some vehicles are traveling through the community. And it's not young, it's not old, it's everybody. And we're in an age where everybody's in a hurry, and we have to realize where we live and how many people that we have out in our community, out and about bicycling or walking, and make sure that we're all doing our best to slow that traffic down. So we're looking forward to working with that ad hoc community in the future. So I'll now move on to old business, street paving.
Okay, I'll take that one. So the street paving project update with Atlantic Southern Paving. The most recent update, we've been reaching out to them and trying to correspond when will a start date be, is that the city of Cape Coral still has the permit under review. Unfortunately, they have no control over the timing with the permitting. They will be able to give us a solid date after the permitting is approved, about plus or minus 2 weeks out once the permit is approved.
Casey, I do have an additional area that seems to have developed, so please communicate with me when we have a start date, because there will be a little additional work. It should not have a significant impact on the budget. And also, we discussed whether they were going to be repainting the crosswalks and the stop sign, the white before the stop signs to make it much more visible and safe for our residents. Is that included?
Yes.
Okay. Is there going to be an evaluation of are the paintings in a correct location on the pavement in conjunction with the stop signs and the crosswalks?
We haven't requested anything that specific, just to, in their cost, it would be just to touch up what's there.
Well, we can work with risk assessment to evaluate that, and I think we should do that, frankly.
Maybe see an additional, what could be added, even if it is in compliance, maybe what they recommend.
Sure. We could
well, there's a lot of scenarios where the stop sign's after the crosswalk, and it's confusing to people. And when exactly do you stop? Okay. Most people don't stop at the crosswalk; they stop at the stop sign. Always
stop if you see a resident, even approaching. It's frustrating how often I see that, how dangerous and disrespectful it is. I'm sorry if it's not nice to say, but frankly, it's a real danger, and I don't have a lot of patience for that. And I've seen it happen a lot of times. So you see a crosswalk, slow down and look.
We had one child hit.
Absolutely.
Under new business, finding and suspension of levies.
There's a few changes to the proposed, so just the first one that's ending in 81401, that account, in addition to the recommended fines that are in place, $100 the open garage door, $100 parking in front of fire hydrant, $100 trailer parked overnight, $200 ATV parked out front, $100 hose reel out front, $100 overnight street parking. The Covenants Committee recommended a suspension of use rates for 90 days. Would you like to go one by one to vote on these, or would you like to do it as a whole as we have in the past?
What's the board's pleasure?
I would say as a whole.
As a whole. Okay, I'll move on. If you have any questions, let me know. Next one, 06001, $100 dead sod, $100 weeds in driveway, $100 mulch needed, $100 weeds and sod, $100 weeds and landscaping, $100 tree trimming, $100 broken light, $100 Christmas decorations. And also it was, in addition, is that the amenity use rates are suspended for 90 days. The next one is actually removed. They striked that one. No fine for account 02901. They came into compliance right prior to the meeting, so the Covenants Committee recommended to remove that one from being fined $100. Next one, 00201, $100, dead sod. Account 00401, $100, dead sod. The next one, 00701, they motioned to remove this one as well. They came into compliance. 00901, $100, dead sod, was also motioned to remove, came into compliance. The next one, 01101, $100, dead sod. The next one, 03101, $100, weeds in the driveway. And also there was an additional $100 due to dead sod that was approved. Removing both 01401 and also 05001 in regards to dead sod, ripped flag, weeds and sod, those both came into compliance. The last one, 39901, $100 fine recommended for code of conduct, and also 90-day use rate suspension. Before I move to the next item on the fines, does anyone have any questions, or would the board motion to approve what the Covenants Committee has recommended?
Kathy makes a motion.
I motion to approve.
We have a second? Laurie seconds. In discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is a request. I just pulled this out. Sorry. The Covenants Committee sent in, dear Casey and Board of Directors, it's come to our attention that one of the residents had a basketball hoop erected in front of their home, and they were given 2 weeks to have it removed. They did not have room in their garage to store it, so it sat there until the hearing notice went out. Following the hearing that she did not attend, a fine notice was sent out. As a result of this, the committee fined $1,000, and it was applied to her account. Ms. McNeil, did not, this is what they sent in, did not receive either the hearing notice nor the fine notice. She was genuinely confused and upset and apologetic about her situation. The Covenants Committee would like to suggest that they do not fine or retract the fine from this resident in light of their making her mail being returned to the office, which was a certified letter that was not signed for or picked up. She was unaware of the violation hearing and the decision to place the fine following no show at the hearing. The basketball hoop has been given away and is no longer a nuisance. So this was a question that came. The Covenants Committee would like the board to consider removing the $1,000 fine and suggest no more than a $100 fine. If the fine isn't deemed necessary, that it would only be $100 instead of the $1,000.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it was 1,000, and they're asking for it to be reduced to 100 or to be removed entirely?
They're asking for, the recommendation is to remove it. They said in the event that the board deems it necessary to charge a fine, which the board already did, so this would be changing what was voted on in the past. And then they would suggest, if that is the case, then only retract the $1,000 and only charge $100.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure. It was not signed for. It went to their correct address, and it was not signed for.
To pick it up.
Or they weren't there?
Or they, I mean, I don't know the specifics, but it did not get signed for or picked up, and it was returned as not picked up.
It refuses to sign for them. They get returned. So that's a big difference than not getting it.
Are we also sending, obviously, statutorily, we need to send certified letters. Are we also sending an email?
Yes. Well, it's changed with the previous management company was not emailing. They were only doing certified. Now the new And what my understanding is that the board with First Service Residential decided to do emails rather than just certified letters. And it's not statutory that they have to go out certified. They do not always go out the first letter. They could go out just email.
Well, the main point is that residents that go back north or are traveling for an extended period of time, they have another way of getting this communication.
Now.
Rather than simply getting
Right.
a notice on
Timely.
the door that they're not going to be able to receive. So I think that's a good step.
It's a good point.
And residents ask for it, emails, to be timely, in their responses.
Yeah, it's been nice it's cost effective and also quick delivery.
What is the board's pleasure on either eliminating the fine or reducing it to $100?
How long ago was it? Was it just the last meeting?
No,
This was a
this
long
one
time
would
ago.
have been, because the $1,000 was implemented, the board changed that to the first fine being $100, so it was prior to that. So my guess would be when they went to go, once the new accounts, my guess would be they weren't notified by Pope management previously. So now with the new accounting setup, a lot of people are finding that their balance is higher than maybe they thought.
Okay.
And so now they're like, oh, wait, you actually have it on my account. What is, going on? And that's how it's discovered.
Do we know in this particular account whether an email was sent?
For this one, I would have to take a look if an email was sent or not. Certified letter for sure. I don't know off the top of my head.
I think if she was given 2 weeks' notice and she failed to respond to it because she couldn't fit the hoop in her garage, then I would think that she should be fined. Although I would not fine her the $1,000, but I think I would fine her the $100 because she did, according to this, she was given 2 weeks' notice to have it removed, and she didn't adhere to that.
My feeling to the board is when I think there's a question and none of us really have a really consensus on what we want to do, I think that's why we have our committees, to make those recommendations. And when we don't have a strong interest or quorum one way or the other on how we feel, that we defer to the committee's recommendation.
I'm comfortable with that.
I think the chair does show what their recommendation is, that we remove the $1,000 fine and that we charge the $100 fine, is what they're suggesting.
He's saying when the board doesn't completely agree to, yes, go off of that.
Okay.
I would just add, too, that we need to treat every resident the same, and it does sound like there are some extenuating circumstances. Any communication from the finding committee obviously needs to provide some objective criteria that we can make sure that this is everyone is treated fairly. I don't particularly think these rules are in place to be draconian, punish anyone. We want compliance first. That's what, at the end of the day, it's not a revenue source. But the revenue goes to paying for the individuals that have to step up and make sure compliance is in place. So I would defer, frankly, to the committee's decision.
So just to be clear, the committee's recommendation was to suspend the fine?
The $1,000, suspend it, yes, and that if the board deemed it necessary to fine, it would be at the $100 limit, which is what Lori suggested. So do you want to make a motion?
Make that motion?
I make the motion to fine $100
And retract the $1,000.
and retract the $1,000.
I second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Huh? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Casey. Under new business, want to officially welcome Ron back into the hot seat. And Ron, if you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to bestow upon your fellow board members or our residents, we'd be more than happy to hear them.
I think you've heard enough from me tonight. I'll just make this real short and sweet. I had, I had 2 board members reach out to me via email, Anita and Lori. Their emails I very much appreciated. They simply asked me, would you be interested in volunteering your time to help us out? No conditions, nothing that would put me in a position where I felt compromised. And I did reply and say that I would be willing. I communicated with Don via text. I don't know if that got lost, but on the 17th, I did send a text basically saying that I sent Anita and Lori an email saying that I would volunteer. And I did that on purpose, frankly, because it's hard to come up here and take a position that, frankly, I wasn't elected for. And so I wanted to hear from the individuals who ran, and it was my understanding that one of them was no longer available, and the other was willing to defer to me. Based upon that and the fact that no one asked me to compromise any of my values, they just asked me. Frankly, I never had a conversation with Gary ever prior to the vote. No verbal communication with anyone, just basically, you're willing to help out. And with that, I was comfortable saying, okay, so I'll serve the remainder of Al's term, do the best I can for everybody. And if anyone ever wants to reach out to me, feel free. And happy to be working with you all.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. Were these supposed to have gone over
So,
during the...
yeah, I didn't know if you wanted me to do it at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do it at the end. No. The Landscape Committee Dog Park.
Tim?
As I mentioned to you, it's more than dog park.
Right.
So,
Yeah, right.
This is kind of a
Great.
view of what we've been monkeying around with.
Thank you.
Hopefully it can be pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, that's okay. If you don't have enough, I don't.
I think I got just
We
enough
can
for the
share
board
one.
members.
No problem.
That's fine. We can share one.
No, I got one. I just.
How are you? Thank you.
Thank you.
Other aspects of it. We're kind of here as a
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Don.
Uh-huh. Tim?
Would you introduce yourself and your team, please?
Am I on here? My name is Tim Weiss, and I am a member of the Landscape Committee, and I have been working on the dog park situation, and we've been starting with the dog park up in the south, or down on the south end, I guess you're going to say south, so that we could get some movement to keep the people that are using that park, happy. And they need to be happy. So I've got here a drawing of the dog park that is most required from residents' complaints. And it became pretty obvious when I started talking to people on this project that it would be a lot cheaper to do 2 concrete pads in the same area at one time, and this proposal that is rather limited due to the fact that construction is very difficult to have done these days, and out of about 25 names to start with, I had 2 quotes and 1 response that would pretty much refuse to do what we
We have a few more slides in there, Vic, if you want to slowly scroll through the. Jim has been working very hard behind the scenes with all the different concrete folks and paver folks and putting all this together. It just seems to be so cost effective, and with the ADA, we're going to be a lot more compliant. So people can come in their wheelchairs, their motorized chairs and things like that without a problem and sit and socialize with everybody and not have an issue with the lots. Which no matter how much times we're going to throw new turf at it otherwise, it's not going to last a month because that's how fast it's just been disappearing. So we have before and after pictures. The people at home have
some money there that we could use, you know, where this was kind of, I don't want to say unexpected, but it was unexpected.
Which
you
is
know,
normal for landscape.
right.
We inherit problems as they pop up that you are all made aware of and ask us to fix. So it puts our 5-year budget, we just keep going back, and we don't care. But
No.
this is what we found.
This is what we found, and we also, we all have dogs, so we all support this.
We get it.
And we get it, and we've
Well-
spent a lot of time in the dog parks lately.
I can say I moved in 2011. At that time, I had 2 dogs, and we visited Barkley a lot. I don't have those dogs anymore, unfortunately, but it was an issue then, and I know at one point to cover the mud, there was mulch tried, some sort of barrier. There were a lot of half measures taken, which collectively probably cost almost the same amount of money. So it's nice to hear a solution, frankly, and I do think it's needed. That's my 2 cents on it.
So, I don't have a dog, but what you're suggesting is that the dog run in the park is being replaced with concrete.
No, and the people at home saw the picture. So if you picture the okay.
So this is the park, and this area that's in red is going to be cement.
Yes. So this is all destroyed right here, and so that's the exact measurement, basically, of this 12 by 30 that was proposed for there. This looks really tiny, but it actually goes the whole length back. So it's actually leaving the majority of that is grass. We could think of from everybody's perspective.
And I know they've been trying to grow grass there for a long time, and what happens is it becomes a mud puddle. Mosquitoes,
Well, the problem was,
stings.
when you keep applying herbicides, when you keep applying herbicides, then you've killed out all of this stuff that looks like grass that's hardier than grass, and so you've got the bare dirt again right away. So it's just a never-ending cycle of always looking bad. Where now, if you go to the parks now, it looks amazing, and the folks at home saw it on the photos. Those photos were taken.
I've got it pulled up too.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's.
For clarification on these drawings, they were done up kind of quickly, but if you take the end of these drawings where the end of this slab is, there's about 150 or more feet of open area of grass beyond that. And the picture that you're looking at that shows the little red area, the perspective of that picture doesn't really indicate there's that much out there, but there's lots of room for little dogs to run and play, believe me.
So I guess there's just a lot of different numbers here. What's the amount you're actually thinking it's going to be?
Well, basically basically the only quote that I've got that makes any sense to us is the quote from the Lane Bryant Company, which is they were good enough to illustrate to us what the singular price was on each unit and what the together price was, and they are also competitive in pricing with those few people that have indicated to us that they would do it. The $6,600 figure is a good figure by the standards that we've been able to pick up, and the $2,250 savings is rather good to have. You know, I will point out one fact that the big park, the only thing we are quoting now is the pad that is kind of in the middle of it. We aren't putting in a walkway or anything to it. Now it'll be easy to get to. The grass is filling in well. As long as we keep this fertilization and the watering cycle up to what it is now. But I know that they just kind of said something about wheelchairs and walkers. You're going to go to that one. You're going to have a little bit of a process getting through it. But it is definitely something that park needs as well. And if they want to budget in something later for a walkway, if we have risk management steps in and says, hey, wait a minute.
Sure.
Okay, and here again, if you want to wait and see what risk management does.
Our current goal was just the one small dog park until we found it so much more cost effective to add the large one there, so that sidewalk or whatever you would want in the future would be the next year. But we thought such a savings would be silly not to approach both. In my budget, I rounded up to 7,000 because I want to put turf around the new pads. So that allows for that little bump that you're going to have a pallet of sod for one time only.
$6,800 that you referred to for just a small park.
Sorry, so this one park that you're looking at now, that's just the 4350. This is.
That's the small dog park. It's the smallest one. And there's big trees just to the left of that.
Yeah.
And there's a 15 by 30 proposed pad for there under those two shade trees.
But also the large dog park is included in the 6,600.
Correct.
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
This is just one picture. This is just the first
We're
one.
getting a savings.
People at home are seeing
There's other
multiple
pictures. Everybody's seeing.
But we don't have a.
No, that's fine. But the second half is future work. We weren't originally planning on that
We
one.
weren't.
That's just because the savings if you do them at the same time.
Correct.
Okay.
So we thought if y'all put your 2,000 roughly dog park budget towards this, and we throw 5,000 from the landscape budget for it, that saves us a ton of sod that's not going to last a month anyway. And you've got two pads already that first year, and they're nice sized pads. And they were really good about, with the reinforcing and the PSI and all that. It's all.
Well, we're talking about PSI. The wall that we tore down was 1,000. And Al Roper always said you hit that with a baseball bat and you break the wall. The other wall that we put up was about 5. And so you hit that with a baseball bat and you break the bat. If this is 33,000, then that's closer to the 5.
Yeah, a Tyrannosaurus Rex could walk on it and be fine.
And so it is fiber reinforced, so it is a stronger concrete.
As a side, one of the pictures that Vic probably showed the full swimming pool and full metal pails of water. There were no people there, no dogs there, and the big pool was out in the turf. And you all know what that's going to do. It's going to leave a dead ring in the turf. But I used to teach microbiology and all this stuff, and I know people post online, oh, my dog got sick at the dog park. It's because you're not emptying the water completely before you go.
I guess my only other question is around if we kind of hijack that dog park budget for this, what does that do for the rest of the year? Did we use that money last year for dog parks? Is that the entire
There's
budget?
a lot of fencing that needs to be more important. The homeowners are not only want the fresh sod there, but the fencing is a big problem where the dogs can get loose. So we've been waiting. Tropical fence has been extremely backed up. So those funds, and in addition to those funds, we may go over already for fence repairs at the dog park, at least at minimum. I don't know what else would come through the year.
Shouldn't that be a reserve item, though, fencing?
If that's what you guys want to use.
I would expect we have a reserve budget for fencing.
Fencing is a reserve item.
So
Even
should it go into
repairs,
operating?
They've come back and said multiple times that the whole fence needs to be repaired, or replaced rather. So if it's repairs, then it wouldn't be necessarily, we would probably use it for individual line items off the budget. Replacement.
There's not a fence item, a GL item in the operations budget for fencing.
Repairs and maintenance, or you have.
But then this 2,100 is specifically dog parks.
That would be for the repairs that need to be done there. But I think assessing the replacement at the dog parks for the fencing, the fence companies say, a lot of it's crumbling and it really needs the whole, and there was a Band-Aid fix last year, but they really recommend more of a replacement. So And it's one budget. It's not, this is my budget, it's one budget. At the end of the day, it's one budget. If you take it from here, you pull here, you're going to go over here to save here. And I think it just goes to the line item that the board feels it's best. If it's a landscape item or if it's a dog park item, then you may go all the way over in your dog park item,
So the 2,000 is a jail item for out of our operating for dog park.
Right.
And that would be the contribution. So we know where the money's coming from. We're getting generous additional monies from landscaping.
And one of the reasons we passed this out tonight is we wanted to show you that this is our thought process for basically the rest of the year, that $5,000 plays in well. So, that's why we felt it was important to share with you tonight.
It's been very helpful.
Exactly where we are and what we're thinking. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
$2,100 that you could put towards that.
I don't either. And if there were, that's a clear reserve item. So I think this is okay.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Does anyone have any questions about any of these items that we listed that we were proposed? I mean, two of them are fairly large. One's the clerodendrons, and then the other one was the sod replacement. The clerodendrons, that's those plants that look beautiful when they're growing, but they grow like mad. They're cranberry and purple.
I can walk over to Victor's pictures.
And but then we have to chop them down about 3 times a year, and then they look awful. And everybody always comments that they look terrible. They're meant to be a tree, not a shrub, so they never should have been there. And also, we just found out they're considered invasive. The city of Naples does not allow them anymore. So that's one of the big projects we want to get rid of. And then the sod replacement, that is like all over the community. A little bit here, a little bit there, some streets, some in the parks.
I did have one question.
On the inside, the beds are going to be closer down towards the water so that we can keep the grass along either side of the esplanades. So with this clerodendron bed proposed to come out, and you see it's a big ticket item, we've gone to the Bonita Bay mandate of how to design to put in. There are areas along Hopefield that's included in that. And if you go across from Maryville and Brightside and Hopefield to Sutherland, the amount of Bermuda that's taken over, there's zero grass left. It might look kind of green different parts of the seasons, but the Bermuda gets kind of different colors other times of the season, so then everybody thinks, oh, there's something wrong with it. No, that's all that's left is that invasive weed. So if you approve what we have budgeted for in the grass replacement, and remember, it was many, many, many tens of thousands of dollars, and we never had approval before. So we're trying to keep it down in a reasonable chunk and do a different chunk every year moving forward. But the homeowners have to realize, especially by like Brightview, we have to kill Bermuda at least 3 times in a row. And it's a huge area. It's from like the street to the lake and, you know, blocks long. It also shows pictures on the streaming where we are butting up to people's backyards, and we're going to have to start replacing their yards with this if we don't do something now. We can't keep kicking that can down the road every year. It's been kicked down. We've been saying that this is happening, and it's to the point now where we're many tens of thousands. We don't want to get into the many hundreds of thousands with this size property. So that's why that's in this request. But it's going to be brown and ugly. They all have to know that. If we're going to kill that big of an area, people have to brace. I
would hope we could send out a communication to let residents know that this is on purpose.
Because the roots can be 6 foot deep, and so you might kill off the top bit, and a little bit's going to take a while to come up, and then they're going to hit it again and wait and see. And if we see any more green, they're going to hit it a 3rd time. Okay. So, but now's the time. Okay. For rains and such as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any questions on the board members?
Want to make a decision on the dog park? The heads?
You want to make a motion?
Okay.
Sure.
Make a motion that we approve the $6,600 2 pads at Barkley Park and the additional sod to go around the pads once they're put in.
I second it.
Ron seconds it.
Do you want to set a not to exceed?
Pardon me?
Do you want to set a not to exceed amount?
Well, I think we would say that 5,000 is going to come out of the landscape. And then you've got the 21 that's in the dog park. And if it's 66, and Allison made the comment she thought it would be 7.
Right, for the sod. So it would be 2,000.
Right. Okay. 2,000?
So 7. Not to exceed 7.
Not to exceed 7.
Got it. Thank you.
Is that correct, Allison? Not to exceed 7.
Any other questions? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Doesn't make sense to me. Dog park is cement.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Very informative.
We should also make sure that our rules are updated to coincide with the signs.
I would think that would be a...
If you don't have it in the rules and regulations, you mean you want to...
Correct. We want to verify that we have
Do you want to change the rules and regulations to add that in?
Yes.
I would imagine, I would be surprised if it said.
Yeah, I think it needs to be added.
Because if there's a constant recurrence, it may develop into a finding situation, and if it goes to a hearing, we need authority to levy that fine.
Right.
So, and just for documentation, you want to make a motion for that, to change the rules and regulations, or add in.
A second on Melanie's motion.
Okay.
Ron? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd also ask, going forward, do we want to approve facades and some of these things that have been proposed here? It's within the 64.5 of the GL line item. I'll second.
Motion by Ron, second by Dawn.
For the sod.
The 47,000 amount?
Well, the total, including what has been spent to date, is 63,112, and that leaves us a balance uncommitted of 1,387 for the year.
Dawn second. Questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Very helpful
No,
for
carries.
management, because I know they're doing a lot of work, so in order for us to have to approve or go, so, and
Each
it's what
one,
the
yeah.
budget was based off of, so it takes a lot of pressure off. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, new business, towing issues. You want me to start that? You want me to? Talked enough tonight? I want Jerry to come up here and beat me up. As we mentioned earlier, I met with Jerry a few weeks ago, and we discussed one of the major issues that came up was, the security at Somerville and towing issues. And we subsequently met with Jerry again, and I think we came to a logical agreement that would work for both Sandoval and Somerville. Is that the concern was that security wasn't patrolling in Somerville anymore, and they weren't checking the pool. So we've assured Jerry that security will begin, if they haven't already, to be patrolling Somerville as they would any other areas of Sandoval. They will do a pool check as well. So we're glad to have that aspect back, and everybody kind of pleased there. The towing became another issue because Somerville has far more infractions, I guess you would say, towing infractions than we do at Sandoval. So it becomes cumbersome for us to tow. A couple reasons. First of all, if we're primarily only going to tow at this point in time for overnight street parking in Sandoval in general. Overnight street parking is really not an issue because there's really no place to park on the street in Somerville. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, but can't park a pickup truck or a motorcycle. And we really, Ron and I discussed from risk management point of view, just a lot of point of views, we just don't feel comfortable towing vehicles out of driveways. And nor do we have the manpower to even enforce all that. So at this point in time, as far as towing is concerned, if there was overnight parking, we will enforce that. But as far as any of the other parking, and we'll put out a notice, Casey, that we'll pick an effective date, and we can stick our cars up until that date. But after that date, we're going to hook them because we're just getting a lot of complaints all over the community about overnight parking. It seems to come and go, but we're back to where we're. Quite frankly, some of our residents are just taking advantage of the fact that we're not towing. Experience tells me that once we tow one or two cars, that problem will probably go away.
If I could add one point, if you don't mind. One unique aspect was the guest parking at Somerville. And the plan is to treat their guest parking like we would treat all other guest parking throughout the community. It seemed like a fair approach, frankly, that when we're looking at the clubhouse or Barclay Park or Happy Paws or any area where there's parking, there needs to be parking passes. So we certainly are comfortable including that. And it's just more of an efficiency thing that we're utilizing our resources in a fair way to everybody. So that's certainly another component we felt very comfortable with.
Jerry, would you want to talk about the signs?
Yeah, and I'd like to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Does Somerville have separate parking? Who gives out the parking passes for your guest parking?
Yeah, Somerville actually, our management company manages whenever we need additional parking passes. We also have several residents with a contact list. Let's say, our management company's there only on Mondays and Thursdays. Friday or Saturday, you have somebody pop in and you're going to need an additional parking element. We have a contact list, so we distribute parking passes ourselves as well. We usually will issue those for a maximum of a 14-day window. So if you've got guests coming in or whatever, and we have had scenarios where we will reissue. So if you've had guests come in, they get a 14-day pass. If for some reason the guest needed an extended period of time, we'll review that at a case-by-case basis, and it's possible that they could be issued a new pass based upon situations. But we do record not only the owner as well as the vehicle information, and then those are hung from the mirror of the vehicle.
So you want us to embrace their management contracts rules and try to keep up with who's okay and who's not? It's totally different than ours.
No, I don't think it's...
No, not really.
Just if they have a pass,
If you're parked overnight in the guest parking areas, you are required to have a valid parking pass, which
Correct.
is pretty much the passes themselves are different than the Sandoval passes, but the policy and procedure, as far as I'm understanding, is exactly the same. It's just that the passes themselves are slightly because we've had situation in the past where when we were enforcing towing, they showed up at the Sandoval office, they got a parking pass, they parked down at the Somerville pool, and the vehicle got towed because that was not a valid parking pass for Somerville. So we want to make sure that it's known that if you're parking in the guest areas of Somerville, you're requiring the Somerville parking passes.
So, it's important at this point. It sounds subtle, but it's very important that any communication as far as the towing rules has to have a disclaimer on there that basically says if you park in Somerville guest parking, you will need to get a guest pass from Somerville. We need to make sure the residents understand that simply because they have a parking pass for our visitor parking, it just doesn't apply. And I think that's the only caveat that I would add in terms of any twinge in the rules. And it doesn't seem to be a significant one. They check to see if there's a pass, and we can provide them copies of the pass if it's there's an issue. But basically, is there a Somerville pass on there? And if there is, fine. If there isn't, well, then they've got issues.
Right. Do you have a question, Cassie? I thought I saw you raise your...
No, I think you answered it.
Okay.
The passes are issued by a select few that the board...
Primarily, our management company issues those.
Residents do not have individual
But we have a few board members that also have them and are willing to issue those on an exception basis. But again, the expectation is, if you've got guests that are coming in town and you're going to need that extra parking, get with the management company and get an appropriate pass issued. If an emergency scenario shows up and that isn't going to work, maybe your guest has showed up after the time that management would be available to provide that for you, then there is a contact list where you can get those passes available. But it is, again, we have our own rules and regulations on who and how those passes can be issued. We're not asking Sandoval to, enforce that or anything. We're just simply saying, as part of the standard security efforts on a nightly basis, if they're patrolling at 1 a.m. or sometime after that, obviously, that they're looking at those guest spaces and making sure that they all have that valid parking pass with the appropriate dates.
So there's two different passes, right? There's the Sandoval passes, and then there's the Somerville passes.
Correct.
Just two passes.
Basically, security just has to know that they can't mix.
Right. And if they can't do that, we've got bigger problems.
Right.
Conversely, the Somerville people would need to know that pass doesn't mean they can park.
Correct.
at the
Correct.
clubhouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know,
So would a resident, okay, so I noticed, my neighbor routinely parks their car in the street. Do I call security? Do I call towing? Do I call the general manager?
No, you would call, if it's a problem, you call the general manager, let her know that there's a problem there on a recurring basis. She would in turn notify security. We're going to have to shift the hours of security because right now we don't have security past
Have we
1 o'clock.
decided on changing the hours definitely?
Not yet, no. But we have to, obviously, to enforce it. So if that goes to 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, once they're there at 1 o'clock, that's towable offense at that point in time.
And then security can initiate it if they see a car on the street once their hours are extended.
They would call the towing company, exactly.
Because that was questions we had before.
And I think we will be sending out basically updated rules.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that there's a lot of sensitivity about towing from anybody's private property, and I think the rules will reflect that. But we'll provide those disclaimers in terms of the parking passes, and there obviously needs to be communication back and forth before we send that out.
We can still put enforcement stickers, violation stickers on if you're, you parked over the sidewalk or whatever on your driveway.
Trailers
we
and
still want to
boats.
do that, and that can escalate up
And it could
to a
be
code
fine.
enforcement and to a fine or
Right. Just not ripping their car out from their driveway.
Okay.
And taking those stickers off is not an easy task.
I agree.
Jerry, we all good on this?
Yeah, I think so. And I guess the only other item on this specific topic was the letter that Casey read on my behalf at the beginning of the meeting. I did provide a couple of photos to each table at least. And again, I know Casey read the letter earlier. I just think that, prior to towing, I feel personally that the signage that we have that indicates the towing company and the potential contact number should your vehicle be towed isn't appropriately displayed throughout the community. I think if you end up with a towing scenario, whether it's a resident or a guest, I don't know that they would have a clue who to call or where to call other than CCPD on somebody stole my vehicle. And I understand the state statutes on what the legal limitations are or requirements are as it relates to private property. I think legally we're in compliance for that, but I also feel that as a courtesy to our residents, I think we could probably go above and beyond what is legally required. And so I gave some examples, both of the signage that's currently at the photo I took is from the Veterans Gate. I understand there's also signage at the Pine Island entrance as well. But if you look at that signage, first and foremost, not only does it say that you're entering private property and that violators will be towed, but the phone number in the company for contact is very, very small in the corner of the sign. I know we did the signage ourselves. There's a blow-up version of, believe it or not, you can read the number. You just better be really close in order to read it. The third photo that was provided is simply an example of signage that Somerville used years ago. So this is an old version of signage, but at least in that one, if something similar to that was provided, maybe at the dog parks, like I said, if you were perhaps, I know you were saying that you don't allow parking overnight at Calypso. You don't allow parking overnight at Happy Paws. So if a vehicle was in one of those locations and was towed because someone left their vehicle there past hours, someone shows up to get their vehicle, they're going to be wondering, where'd my car go and who do I call to get it back? I think a sign maybe at those locations primarily as a common area, or maybe at the clubhouse. I mean, I'd leave that to the board for discussion on how many or where those need to be provided. But I certainly don't feel that the signs and the phone number that we have available today is adequate. So I would ask that we review that prior to implementing towing.
Right.
Thank you.
Good idea. Thank you.
We can put it on the website or on the app or something too, like the phone number or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, just to clarify though that it's not for people to called to get anything towed. It's in case you get towed.
Right.
Right. Thank you. It's always good to bring things like that to a successful resolution. Neighborhood liaisons and committee members?
We didn't have a great amount of additions to that, so it's in the board packet, one of the last pages.
Our neighborhoods.
Here, want mine? Jim Swaggart already says I talk too loud at the meeting, so. They put me close to the mic. Anyways, this is, honestly, with everything going on, the neighborhood liaison, it's a weight for management that we still have not implemented meetings. It's highly sought after by the residents. There's not every single street has someone that's put in a name, and with everything else going on, it's not been something that I've had the time to really embrace and grow. So I don't know what streets are missing. I don't have who was added new from the last meeting to this meeting. I just had Nicole print this out to provide.
I think that's something we need to research, though. When you get some time, we need to find out. Well, I'd like to have a representative on every street, obviously. And some of the board members may be able to reach out to people we know, if we know which streets aren't represented, and then and make sure that we have full representation throughout the community. Okay. Solicitation for any additional agenda items?
I have some items that are outstanding. I didn't know to go over during the management report or now. So management's brought in front of the board all the homeowners that have had the yard drainage issues in the past multiple times. It's been discussed multiple times. So essentially, the board would need to decide to pay an engineer to assess it or to pay legal to further evaluate, because at this point, we've gone as far as we can with legal and with the engineer. So I do note everyone should be familiar with this, and then Gary, Lori, I think you would be possibly the newest to this unless you've listened to the other board meetings. It's where a yard has heavy saturation. They feel that there's a grading issue. They feel like there's a runoff from the berms, that their yard's being saturated. So I'm asking the board, would you want to vote on the association paying for the drainage or not? Is that something that a decision can be made and provided to the residents, or is there another route that you would like to pursue, potentially paying an engineer, paying legal?
I certainly think we need to be very careful here to avoid setting a precedent that's not favorable to the community. What I would particularly want to see is basically a case-by-case summary of the facts to provide enough information that we could then evaluate whether it's a legal decision or not on a case-by-case basis. So I would need a lot more information before I would even venture to make anything resembling a decision.
And I can tell you from a personal standpoint, we had a similar situation at our home at the end of Casberry, and we paid $2,000 to have a drainage pipe put in, and then that was out of our pocket, because it was basically told to us at that time that was our problem. So, and things can change, but I tend to agree with Ron. I don't think we can make a carte blanche decision that anybody that has a drainage problem, that Sandoval is going to pay for it.
We are talking about water on individual residential lots, correct?
Right.
And so if they're alleging that this is coming from a common area grading issue, those facts need to be presented in a way that we could look at them and decide whether this needs to go any further. But that has to be on a case-by-case basis. It just can't be, hey, I feel bad for these folks, and frankly, I'm sure we do, but the reality is we have an obligation to the HOA to accept our responsibilities.
Residents' responsibilities, unless you can come forward and present a case to say why this is common area and why you feel somebody else should be covering this?
If they're asking for the HOA to pay to remedy a situation on their private property, they need to explain to us why. And frankly, that needs to be accompanied with facts. And then if those facts then can be evaluated, and then we can decide at that point whether it needs to go to legal or not. But we don't have enough information right now to make any type of decision, and certainly not a global decision, frankly, because we want to treat every resident fairly.
But I think that gives good guidance to us, at least we have some response back to residents that have been patient, waiting and waiting, so at least I can let them know at this time, if you feel that way and you want to provide your own engineer report or what you feel that the case might be, I'd be happy to present that to the board case by case.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and some other issues too, correct?
Oh, sorry, yes. I'll just that's later. So these were also previously presented. This is, there was a lake, and I want to say Lake 18, but I could be way off, 30-something, I'm not sure. But these two lakes were recommended by the lake company to Solitude Lake Management. There was one lake recently that they treated based off of a testing. So the board had approved testing to be done in the lake, and then they would provide a summary of now action plan. So they're now proposing, and I'm not sure if this is, we sent in a lot of work orders to the lake company when there was the fish kill most recently, the algae, and all the different concerns. We were sending, all these different work orders to them, and they sent back to that Lake 10 and Lake 13. They recommend it being tested. And so that would be up to the board if that's something similar to what was done with a previous lake. No, because these last year, all of these are new. We increased it a bit, but the exhibits were not. It's just a contract. Everything in the contract is just maintenance. Anything in addition to that, except for we increased it just a small bit based on the testing last year. So 2021 had a small increase for possibly to cover this testing, but then for something to be treated, you're going to be above what's in the budget.
What is position on this? Have we gotten feedback from them?
Yes, the Lakes Committee would be in agreement to the testing. They have.
And is the Lakes Committee confident that the issue isn't from a lack of maintenance from the contractor?
I would have to ask them that in writing and get that back in writing to give you an answer.
I think we run a big risk here of going above the budget.
I'd like to see some substantiation from the Lake Committee on
And I
this.
think they need to look at it from a budget point, not, it needs to be done, that kind of thing. I think you have to weigh all these factors. And I'm not saying not doing it, but I think you have to, when you get a recommendation, it has to take budget into consideration.
I think also, just on an outside note of budgeting, the Lakes Committee works off of a budget that includes their contract maintenance, and not anything, so possibly the budget did not support the need. And so I would be happy to reach back to them and get there, but essentially they have had a lot of communication with the lake company and reports and all of those things. So I can present to the board what their opinion is and confirm in writing and give that feedback.
Also, are we getting updates? Because it's my understanding they're maintaining our aerators. Are we getting updates of any repairs or how well they're working? I want to make sure that's not an issue that's causing this, because it seems like there's a lot more algae in some of these lakes that precipitated to fish kills.
Frankly.
And some residents, there's a larger lake that they were, I think it might be near Somerville, but they said that the air, anytime that the aeration, a resident has put in a work order in email, we forward it on, and the aerator has not been a problem at all whatsoever. So they do, that's posted on the Live Sandoval. They send in a lake management report every single month, very detailed with everything. So from all of the correspondence over the last 6 weeks, whenever this flare-up took place, no aerator issues were reported. Sorry, I feel like...
Are they checking the aerators on a quarterly basis to make sure they're working?
There's a maintenance contract.
Right. Yeah.
And we're getting a report that's saying they're working at maximum efficiency.
Weekly and monthly.
Okay.
And it's posted on the website for residents as well.
Yeah, my suggestion, too, be if this is something that you're contemplating doing, we need to know where we might be able to save somewhere else so that the budget tries to stay balanced.
Thank you. The slide is currently closed due to repairs needed. We have tried to get multiple bids from multiple companies. We really only got 2 companies that were responsive, and the first quote came back from Safe Slide in the amount of $34,677, and it was extensive, 18 to 20 seams, very extensive work that they recommended, and photos are attached. Those are all in the packet. And then we received a second proposal from Slide Right for $5,000, and that was just patchwork, 6 joints on the water slide to be repaired. So we went back to Safe Slide and said, hey, match this. We just took out the work description. If you do just this work description here, what would you charge? And then they came back again with $10,300. So as you can imagine, many residents are anxiously awaiting this slide to open back up, and we want it to be safe, and obviously the money needs to be considered. Where is it going to come from? Is this...
What's the cost of replacement of the slide?
I don't know.
I will mention that the last repair that was done, actually, in my opinion, did more damage to the slide.
Was that an in-house repair? Did you guys contract out?
I think that was done.
That was not done on.
That was done in-house, I think.
How long?
I wasn't
ago?
on the board then.
Well, that was when Sean was
so it was
here.
quite a while.
Wilson
That was
here
done under
and
Sean.
Steve.
Oh, okay.
And I would encourage every board member to. Don and I went and looked at it, and we were shocked. I mean, number one, aesthetically, it looks ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's a seam, and it should have some flexibility, and it's filled in solid, which when pieces flex, then it cracks the.
And they actually grinded down significant portions of the slide, and to the detriment and integrity of the slide.
Of the fiberglass.
So I think at least the lesson here is to make sure we know what we're paying for, number one. Do the repair correctly, number two. And make sure, frankly, that we're not doing any more damage to the slide, number three.
I think we ought to look on the reserve and see how the reserve treats the slide and what the replacement years are. And so we're talking from a position of intelligence here.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. What's the life expectancy
Right.
of the slide?
I'm sure that has to be. It's a big item. I'm sure it's a single item listed in the reserve study.
I would emphasize, though, it's a big item, but it needs to be addressed because, frankly, summer's coming. So I think we need to work hard to come up with a solution with time frame in mind.
And my concern is, $5,000 fix could be $5,000 every month.
It could be.
It's just a Band-Aid.
A patch.
I think you'll be disappointed when you can take a closer look at it.
And the last thing we want is to put $5,000 and close it again a month later.
Right.
Well, even as ugly as that repair is, it did last I mean, it's not good. I mean, it's not lasted now, but it lasted. If it happened when we think it did, it's been 2 or 3 years.
Well, I didn't go down the slide, and I can tell you there's significant rough.
I
We may have gotten lucky.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's ready to go down.
You test that for us tomorrow.
I just think you need something not a rigid material to join.
Well, give some food for thought here on, can you also get us a quote for if it was to be replacement?
And
we need to check the reserves to see.
Check the reserves.
That's easy.
Also, did this include making sure that all the color is the same? Because frankly, they just made it gray, and it looks really aesthetically poor currently. So is everything going to be the same color according to this repair? I wasn't able to tell.
I can't imagine they're going to match the old. They're not replacing the whole, so I would imagine there would be some discoloration if you're just doing patchwork.
Well, right now it's like off-white, I believe,
the areas
and
that
gray.
of concern are there's several segments of the slide, and where the concern is where the segments come together and they're bolted together. There is a patch that's in there that is chipped out and it's very sharp. That's the problem.
I think these are professional companies. I don't know who did the last one, but if it was not a professional...
I think all of these are better than what you had.
Correct.
So the board's direction is to check reserve amount and get new proposals for total replacement cost.
Not really. I think that's just a pie in the sky.
Yeah, I think
I think we'd like to know. Yeah,
I mean, we'd like to know. I mean, we would like to know, but I don't think that's going to...
Okay, so okay. So I'll get you guys the reserve number, and then will you be able to make a decision in which direction?
I think we want to know what it costs to replace it,
Yeah,
and then
talk to me.
value.
Okay.
Is it worth it?
I can't tell.
Fix it,
So you
or
do. I thought
just
that's
replace
what you wanted, and then it was
that sounds
like
good,
a
because I
pie in the
can't.
sky, and so now I didn't know.
Yeah.
In other words, if we can replace it for 40, why would we want to spend?
I get all of
$40
that,
to fix?
absolutely. I just didn't know if, I thought it was now you don't want a real proposal for replacement. So,
No,
okay, got it.
it's good information to have, but I think we really need to do some legwork before the next meeting so we're prepared to take action, especially in anticipation of summer coming up. Because frankly, getting this done in August or September is not a great plan, frankly.
No.
And just the last one that I had was the Architecture Review Committee sent over a request for some changes and the design review guidelines that are presented in the packet. I think, Kathy, if you could assist in the one, maybe trash container. There was a conversation after I had sent out the packet.
Right. So, as many of you know, dating back to when Molly was still here in October, November, December, we saw the need to provide clarification with the design review guidelines. So we were identifying some of the problem areas that there was concerns by residents, and our response, the ARC's response back to them saying that it doesn't, it's not provided for in the guidelines. But also certain things weren't specified, such as colors, and you might remember with Scott talking about gravel. So with exterior, one of the issues now is exterior colors, in that, again, if you're going to paint your house, the colors can be used, the colors that are approved can be used throughout the community. However, you have to request the ARC approval prior to painting if you're going to change the color. And you need that approval prior to the painting, is the issue. Also, if you're looking at sample windows and metal finishes, roof material, trim shutters, and chimney caps and accents, as well as the garage doors, have become an issue. People are painting garage doors white. The garage door has to be the same color as the house. So we're providing language to clarify that. Regarding the trash containers, this was discussed in the fall, and the board previously approved that trash containers shall be stored in garages or on the side yards behind the front building line and shall be screened from direct view of the street by landscaping. we removed the fence and wall reference. Those white fences, fencing is not allowed or authorized. So the fencing should not have been on this submission. It was just carried over by the chair. The driveway and walkways, I think we discussed this a little bit previously, that if you're going to extend your driveway, you need ARC approval, and it cannot extend beyond the frame of the garage. And the pavers have to match the current style of pavers that are used. Lawn ornaments, this is something now that has been previously addressed with lawn ornaments. We did authorize, prior to my appointment on the board, up to 5 pots were authorized in front of houses. But we're seeing now statues, fountains, and flags, yard flags. None of that is allowed. So we want to clarify that the lawn ornaments are prohibited in the front and side yards, and specifically statues and garden flags. And then with roofing, this came up, Don, you might remember from the meeting last, no barrel tiles. We had a couple of requests for barrel tiles.
Yes.
And they want colors that do not fit the aesthetics of the neighborhood, that they want to do something completely different. So we're turning it back, saying that it has to be the flat tiles, and the roof color shall be warm and earth tones. And again, we direct them to look at their neighbors, and there's various degrees of colors that you can use that are beige and browns and rusts and reds and oranges and whatnot. So the plan is we're very near to having a revised DRG with all of the clarifications that we've discussed since like the October timeframe. Also, at the last meeting, we did change the deposit for a roof to $500, so the application has been modified. So we're looking like as early as next week to get the new modified design review guidelines, the application, and the checklist, all dated May 2021, so that everybody is on the same page and it's on the website for ready use. So,
I do have one question.
Yes.
And hopefully you can answer this. In terms of what grass for residential, is it specified? Because when I moved in, I was told it was St. Augustine, specifically Floratam. And as Allison alluded to, when you have a Bermuda and against a St. Augustine, they're actually competing. And one of the benefits of being in the community is you have this consistency where you don't have those scenarios. And then I was surprised to hear that we don't have a specification for the type of grass that residents are supposed to be utilizing. Is that accurate?
I don't know specifically grass. I don't recall. I know we want natural products. I know dog runs, people wanted to put in artificial turf. It specifically says natural products. I know landscaping plans are required when you do an extended lanai in a pool, but I don't know if it specifies grass.
Well,
there's authorized.
Is invasive.
It is. And what if a resident wants to put in Bermuda?
There's authorized shrubs and there's prohibited.
There must be grass.
I honestly don't know. I'll have to
If you could have that
too.
addressed and possibly included, I think it would be good to communicate with Allison on this issue too, because she obviously can explain the reasoning behind having this certain type of grass. I believe almost every resident. And when I got my letter in 2011 introducing me to the community, it specifically specified Floratam, which is a type of St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, okay, I just got an email from one of the ARC members for Design Review Committee. St. Augustine, St. Augustine is what we tell, but it's not specified.
I think we should specify it. We need a legal basis if we're ever to have to
And
go to
like,
a final
some of these violations were requiring sod replacement, but we don't specify.
I would highly recommend the book.
Oh, you would have to then.
So specifically, you're saying the St. Augustine?
I believe.
Allison's gone, is she?
Yeah, I would just say at a minimum, St. Augustine. Floratam is a type of St. Augustine. It's, I believe it's installed in almost every yard. But I'm not knowledgeable enough to say whether we need to be that specific. I would just ask for it to be included.
I'll follow up with Allison, and the ARC is, we're meeting on Saturday. And per the charter, it requires 2 meetings a month, so we're going to 2 meetings a month.
Okay.
With COVID, there was just a lot of people making a lot of change in work and whatnot. So we were meeting weekly, but now we're going to the every other week.
Sounds like a lot of work's getting done. So that's
yes.
really needed work.
Jumping back to the fencing, that really is kind of mushroomed in phase 3, particularly
yes.
on a couple streets. And what happened there? I mean, because people are calling me and say, well, Jerry told me I could put the fence up, or Sean told me I could put the fence up. Of course, they don't have any documentation to that effect.
For 3 years, there's a number of residents, especially on my street, Vareo, where we've been arguing. I'm on the 2600 block, so we don't have the issue that the 2700 block has, because we were told it wasn't allowed. And then the 2700 block was developed a good year later, and suddenly now they're putting up, their shrubs and hedges aren't as mature as ours, which, you know, on the side of the house you can screen it from being seen by the street. So somebody said that they got approval to do the white lattice plastic fence, and suddenly now everybody and their mother has the white lattice. But white lattice fencing, the only fencing is identified in the design review guidelines, but white plastic PVC is not authorized, period. So I know violation letters have gone out regarding the white fences.
I know they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. A question that I have is, it can be a legitimate complaint. You have a shrub in front of this happened to me when we lived on Woodbourne, and landscaping comes down and cuts it in half. So now half your garbage cans.
Right.
It's not really the fault of the homeowner.
Right, but
how do you solve that?
Well, if you are a resident that has their own landscaping, you need to clarify that with your service provider.
Right.
And for those of us in Phase 3 and other streets that have down to earth, that discussion has been had with all of the managers, to include Mike McMillan, the current guy.
Okay.
And who was the guy that was here before with the...
Matt or something, wasn't it?
Matt and...
Billy,
yeah. So when they would come and do their shrubs, they've been told.
I don't think you should be fining, frankly, for down to earth cutting a shrub too short when they get the direction from management, and then management comes and fines you for having a shrub. It's just illogical to me. It's not really fair.
So it is.
You saying we tell them to cut it short?
No, I'm saying that the direction and the rules are coming from management to down to earth in terms of what the expectations are. If they're not following those expectations, or they're cutting the shrubs too short, and the residents are they're being fined for this, that's a bit difficult to stomach.
Right.
So I would certainly clarify that with compliance.
Right, but we've had those discussions. I mean, I know I've had those discussions with the 3 managers in recent years. And like I said, living on Vareo, I'm impacted too with the garbage. There has been issues with the side entrance homes and people putting their garbage outside their garage in the walkways. But we've had, John, you remember the trash ad hoc committee looking at alternatives and whatnot. For those instances, you know, they have no other choice but to put it out there. And I know I'm going to get like 20 letters from my neighbors. I keep mine in my garage. But Scott made a valid point at one of the meetings recently when we talked about the trash, is that, you know, you can't have the entire trash can that's alongside your garage, which is allowed, completely surrounded by bushes, because you have to be able to pull it out and push it in. So it's, you know, from straight on street view. Now, driving down the street, you're going to see it when you're at that angle, but, you know, it is what it is. And I know some of the Phase 3 people are concerned about that, and I know they're well-intended, but we have to make allowances.
So, with the trash containers, what was the change after this? Remove fence at all, or?
Yeah, so the new language reads, trash containers, this is what was approved by the board in October.
Okay.
Trash containers shall be stored in garages or on the side yards behind the front building line and shall be screened from direct view of the street by landscaping. The installation of landscape plant requires the plants to be, at the very least, as tall as the trash containers upon installation, and at a minimum, a 3-gallon plant should be utilized.
Was there a height listed?
The height of the trash can.
Height of the container.
The container.
The bushes have to be that
So,
high.
you know, I don't know if it's 4 feet or, you know, this high.
Any action required on that, Kathy, or this?
No, I think it was more informational. You know, unless you want to approve the statues and garden flags and fountains.
That's okay. The ARC asked that we present this in front of
Yeah, it was over.
Right.
the board.
But again, this is all part of the, you know, the general effort to provide the clarity.
I would entertain a motion to accept the ARC Committee's recommendations.
The lawn ordinance.
Okay.
Oops.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like the ARC committee's doing great work.
Yes.
We have some new people on the committee, so we're happy for that.
Good.
We will, with no further business, now adjourn to open forum.
I'll read the first one that came in via email, and if we, moving forward, want to change that policy, I'm not sure, just let me know.
Here.
There you go.
This one's a little lengthier, but the other ones are short. This one comes in from,
Oh, did we have a
Carol.
motion to adjourn?
oh,
Correct, yes. Motion to
I
adjourn.
motion we adjourn.
Second?
Third.
Thank you. All in favor?
Just because I'm the note taker. And I have the blanks here to fill in the blanks.
okay.
Motion carries.
This just came in this week. It's a complaint from November 2nd, 2020. I'm going to do the timer because it's long and I don't want to go over.
I hate that.
Okay, great. No, apparently this took place back in November the 2nd, and it just was forwarded to management on the 29th and was responded to. I responded right away back to them. Weeks before I closed on 2518 Anguilla Drive on November the 2nd, 2020, I called the office for the procedure to enter in the gate. I was told to advise the gate people of my new address and proceed to the clubhouse. That was all. My son-in-law and I did so. Noel came out and informed us that we needed an appointment, which was not conveyed during my earlier phone call, and that my family and contractors would not be able to gain access. My family was going to supervise the work while I returned to Tennessee for the move. Also, I didn't have the warranty deed, but the closing papers should have sufficed. I told her that flooring and painting contractors were scheduled for the following day because the work really needed to be completed before my move-in date of November the 12th, as I have asthma and cannot tolerate the odors. Her answer to me was that I should contact the former owner and have him list us on an access list. Really, the former owner has more rights than I do by the buyer. Thankfully, a friendly person in the community learned of my plight and gave us access. By the way, I was never informed of my Vera for several weeks after that. A couple of days later, I spoke with Yamli on the phone explaining all that had happened. Her response was that no one had contacted her directly after closing. Unbelievable. Weeks after moving in, I received information regarding the subdivision, utilities, etc. when it was no longer needed. Thankfully, my daughter lives in Cape Coral and was able to provide the necessary help before I moved in. At the office, I filled out the forms, yet I never received the subdivision emails until late February after again emailing the office. In fact, I didn't even know about them until a neighbor mentioned them. Also, my Sandoval mail kept going to my former address, and that hopefully has now been corrected after the email. The other day, I went to the office for pool cards. I requested 2 so that I had one for my bike and one for my car, and Nicole said that it was not possible. Since I'm paying for them, which is unbelievable after paying $3,000 and then monthly dues, it should not be a problem. Then I asked her to print a form for me instead of being helpful. Her response was that the Internet Live Sandoval provided the forms on there. Reluctantly, she did so after I explained that I do not have a computer, nor do I have a printer. I have lived in association subdivisions. I have lived in association subdivisions nearly 50 years in Michigan, Ohio, Alabama, and Tennessee, and have never encountered the lack of helpfulness and disregard for service exhibited by Nicole and Yamley. Several residents have also expressed frustration. Okay. Again, management responded to that email right away once we actually received it. Next one, open forum, is the lagoon pool. Oh, this is in, and we've addressed this one, but my wife and I use the community pool every day. It is a wonderful place to relax and exercise. Recently, with the change in staffing, the pool needs some attention. For example, the tile around the pool needs cleaned. The outside shower and foot rinse isn't working, and of course, the water slide is still closed. My question is, when will the pool have the appropriate staff to maintain its Class A condition? The response back from management, I believe I replied back, or at least confirmed we'll be reading this. The pool company has already stepped up, and they're doing additional tile cleaning where needed. We have job postings to fill the positions for the pool, and we have proposals, and now we'll be working on more proposals for the pool slide. Yes. I'm done, and I am ready to move. Mike Wilson. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike Wilson. I live on Castleberry. I've been here 9.5 years, and I know this is a complicated issue with the telecommunications, and it sounds like we have an excellent group of experts on the side of determining what it is we might need and putting out RFPs and all. Some of you may have seen the emails that have been floating around that there was a volunteer group of Tony L. and Joe Kilrain and Dave Hiller willing to participate in the negotiations when the time is right for that. And according to the emails, it would sound like, and I'm asking you what the true story is, it would sound like they were excluded even though they've got probably 75 or 80 years of experience in negotiating corporate transactions. And I just wondered, one, have they been excluded? And two, if so, why?
Okay. Thank you for your question.
And I could answer that question.
Okay.
Yes, they were excluded, and excluded for a variety of reasons. Number one reason, we, as you mentioned at the start of it, we have an able-bodied, we have our corporate attorney, we have Ron, we have a committee that's more than capable of doing that negotiations. Number two, Joe and David have been a polarizing force in this community. And I can tell you, I personally was one who wasn't willing to put them out there to negotiate on behalf. So I'll accept responsibility for that.
Okay.
And that's the way the chips fell. There's a lot of misinformation coming back, and I'm a big boy, and I'll take that information, but that's exactly what I told them. I was basically going to be bullied into accepting them as our negotiators, and that just wasn't going to happen.
I understand. Well, my only point was they were reasonably successful in negotiating the CenturyLink contract back several years ago, whenever that happened. So I just asked that question because I know each one of them.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rick Collins. Rick Collins? Okay. Oh, he was on the new clubhouse power, maybe on the solar power question I forwarded. Anyway, so maybe we'll put it in writing. I think somewhere in there. So, Rick, feel
I
free
can speak
to.
to that. Several years ago, there was a resident in Phase 3 who had solar. And I visited that home with Sean Wilson, and we discussed the cost of putting solar panels on and utilizing it at the clubhouse. And at that time, we thought it was cost prohibitive. And in the current project, we are limited by a certain amount of dollars that we can spend for the clubhouse, and that would not be able to be fitted into the budget.
Then we have Thomas.
First, I want to say thank you to all the board members and actually the past boards. I know I've been a little bit of a pain in the seat, but I have concerns. So one of the concerns is I wrote, why was the format changed for today? But the second part of that is clubhouse communication. So in this situation, when the itinerary came out for this meeting, I came up to the clubhouse and I asked Nicole, were we allowed to come to the meeting? Her response was no. I came up a second day and I said that Gary had sent out his recap and said that we were. At that particular time, I gave her my telephone number. Okay. Subsequently, from that point, an extra email came out, said that we were available. So I'm assuming somewhere in there it was getting fixed. And if not, that's another situation. But I am still waiting for that phone call to come back. So if we're asking questions and we're not getting the call back, that's not a good thing. Okay. And next thing on my list is Finance Committee. Are we going to have one? And if so, when will those people be told that they're on the committee? Will we have a Finance Committee? I think that's the first place I can start.
Yeah, you're on a timer, so.
Okay, but again, it's been a while and we don't know anything. And going on with the First Residential, I'm assuming, and that's where I get in trouble, that there was an RFP stating when we should get our financials by. I know it's been a little troublesome right now in the changeover, and probably you had something with the risk management. You're only asking for a schedule. So I understand there's some hiccups. Do we think it's going to clear up soon? Clubhouse, is there a way to get the last updated diagram of the full building sent out as an email to all of the residents? I can't read my own handwriting. That's not good. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Address this issue about the committee?
Well, it was actually, I'm glad that you raised that issue. I'm bored, actually. And that was actually one of my questions. I'm glad you asked that question. I don't know if we're still on or not. I'm glad you asked that question because, frankly, it was something I was going to raise. I'm new on this board now. Frankly, I wasn't at the March meetings, and one of my questions was, why don't we have a finance committee? Do we anticipate having a finance committee? Personally, I think it's a benefit to the community to have residents involved. They're privy to a lot of our financial information. We have nearly, a $5 million budget here, and that's a lot of money to have residents overseeing. So more people, the merrier, frankly. We were also able to delegate certain tasks that we need help with in terms of evaluating, for instance, some issues with gate striking. We have some solutions to that cost money, and we can evaluate how much money we have. For instance, like with Bose, one of those issues was we spent a lot of money repairing gates, and we could delegate that to the Finance Committee and have them tell us, is it in our best interest from a financial standpoint to enter into a service contract going forward? I think there's a lot of uses for the Finance Committee, and I hope that we would consider that at least for the next board meeting.
Yes. It was listed as a committee with John Elkins, Tom Robertson, David Saganek, and board liaison Bill Tubb. But that was from the Bill Tubb was what was you would be on it, correct? Not as a. I don't think we have I don't think we have okayed any of the committees. We didn't okay that. We looked at, we saw them, but they added these. We only had 3.
Last month, we asked Casey to send we didn't have enough responses for all the committees across the board. So before we notified each person on their committee, we asked Casey to resubmit an inquiry to the community on who wanted to be on these committees. And that's what's caused the major delay. And yes, you're 100% correct. You need to be notified if you're going to be on a committee. That's something we need to make sure gets taken care of immediately, that people that are been appointed or asked to serve on the committees get notified that they, in fact, are on the committee.
So we didn't move forward with that. Give us the okay. So everyone got a confirmation back that we received your submittal. We would submit it. So at this point, everyone that's on the committees are on the committees.
But we need to send them a communication.
We need to send them a communication. From a board perspective, we don't need to necessarily approve
So is the
these
social
people, right?
I don't know where the
Everybody's
disconnect
free to
is.
be
So
able
is
to
the
start.
social committee. We've had 2
I don't
meetings.
know where there's the disconnect.
As a board liaison, I made contact with the risk management. Well, actually, they reached out to me after the last board meeting when we assigned the board liaisons.
I mean, I've been working with the landscape committee. We've had meetings once a week.
And we've had 2 meetings.
So I think
Yeah.
So why don't we have a Finance Committee?
We do have a finance committee.
We do.
No board liaison. I don't. Did we
It could have.
so while we were in the mix?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think we were in the middle between before Bill came on and before Tony resigned. So I think we can probably move forward with that.
It was my understanding, whoever was already on the committees, they needed to re-put in their name. However, we weren't going to interrupt business, i.e. example of landscape. Let that chairperson and the person that's already on there submit. I guess the disconnect was that we were under the, I was under the impression, I will say, I was under the impression the board was going to say, okay, this is, go ahead and submit. This is the affirmed list or some sort. So.
That's what we did last year. We read off the names, and then the board liaison said, these are the 6 that apply for the committee.
So we started that at the board meeting, but then there were a lot of people that were saying, wait, I still wanted to turn my name in, and then the board was saying there wasn't enough on the list.
And
So
some names weren't
some
on the
were-
list.
Yeah.
Right, so we pitched it, we got more names back in, so no one received an official, because there hasn't been that direction, to be honest.
Okay. So the question is, do we have a Finance Committee in place? Yeah, yes or no?
No one has shut down the financial
Okay.
committee, so there is that title.
Okay. Who's currently on it?
Dave
I think
Saganek.
there's 3 that sent in their names.
Okay.
Dave Saganek
To reapply.
So it is up and going.
and John Elkins.
Right. That's what we did last year. We identified the committee members and the board.
Well, that would
Accepted it.
hold true for all of the.
But
for
the
all the
board
committees.
said at the meeting to not hold up business for those committees that.
So did you carve out? to it in writing too.
I understand. So there is still a committee. There is still a committee. There are people still on the committee. And if the board wants to take a look at all the lists and approve it, or you just want to proceed forward with whoever's on it.
Like a week ago with all of the charters and the committee members. So.
And the zip files, did you get that as well? The charter was charters, and then it was all the committee list. I think you asked, you distributed it to the board.
Yes, okay. Melanie.
Oh, you asked me to send it.
I asked, yes, you sent it out. Everybody has it. What do we have to do now?
Well, it sounds
do
like
we have
Need
to
a board
approve?
liaison.
But you guys did do board liaisons at one of the meetings.
Yeah, last meeting we established the liaison.
Right, but I mean,
I leave for 1 month,
I'm
Don.
saying specifically for finance.
No, because of the close the whole time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I still have the same question. There's 3 people that was on the committee last year. Are you willing to approve them as part of the committee this year while you look for extra people and create the finance committee?
Yes. We're in adjournment, so can't make the motion today. Right.
It never came to.
Yeah.
It never came.
Can we do this via email?
Sure. I think it really just feedback from me
Right.
sending that those committee lists, everyone saying,
Right.
good with me. There's no
You could
formality.
do consent.
Right.
So we'll get working on that and communicate with you, but our intentions are to go forward with the finance committee and all those members that have been identified. Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Anita,
We're meeting with the treasurer and we're meeting with the head of accounting with First Service Residential. Until we get those set and cleaned up and properly, and the bank accounts and everything, it's going to be, the finance committee is going to be asking all questions that have already been asked, trying to get answers that we don't necessarily have the answers. So I think that right now it's at a managerial position where First Service Residential really needs to work with the CPA and work with getting the bank accounts transferred over and everything like that. So I would not want to sit down with anyone and try to explain.
And
So
shoot for May 15th.
Anita said she would be the liaison for finance because she has some financial background.
So I think, the meeting's adjourned. I don't know if you guys want to make that decision right now.
You can
or-
add it to the
The email.
unanimous consent.
Okay.
Just to answer your question as far as FSR, Melanie and Gary, we met with them and we expressed our displeasure. We brought up these exact points, and we've had a subsequent meeting with them, and they seem to be coming around. So we are optimistic that they're going to fulfill their obligations. There's certainly some hiccups, but we are quite clear on what they promised us, and we have every intention of making sure that they deliver. And if they don't, they know, and they are on notice, that we are not happy, frankly.
Regarding the clubhouse, it has not changed since the original drawing that had been sent out by the communication committee.
It's on the website.
Yeah, and I think it's on the website.
It is.
So those drawings are current.
Is that it? Thank you for attending tonight, and see you next month.